Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about the developments that occurred up at the United Nations. We're going to run through what happened, we're going to run through the responses, we're going to run through the signaling, and just kind of go over what it means for things downstream, because it's a big change. Okay, so as suggested in the last video on this topic, the United States did not exercise its veto power. Didn't support it, didn't support the resolution, but didn't exercise its veto power, which means it went through. It went through. It was a call for a ceasefire. In response, Netanyahu canceled a delegation that was headed to the United States to discuss Rafah. Under normal circumstances, canceling a delegation like that, it's a diplomatic protest. In this case, it reinforced the U.S. position. It's important to remember and to truly understand, U.S. foreign policy does not care if Netanyahu pursues a campaign against Hamas. That's not what this is about. This is about a large-scale offensive into Rafah. Netanyahu canceling a delegation to discuss that just reinforced the U.S. position that he wasn't taking their concerns seriously and was kind of blowing it off. When that occurred, the people in State Department who argued for the U.S. to abstain, they won the argument. They won the argument. Those people who have been arguing for a tougher stance, that response reinforced their position. Now, there is other signaling that's worth noting. The administration, through Harris, has signaled that there will be consequences if Israel goes ahead with an offensive into Rafah. The conventional thinking was that, well, that would mean that they would abstain. But they already did that. They already abstained. The U.S. already abstained. That's not the consequence. If they go into Rafah, since the U.S. has decided not to use its veto power, that means that the only real consequences left on the table are economic sanctions against settlers on a large scale, or the complete suspension of offensive military aid. So the situation and the relationship between Netanyahu and Biden, tense doesn't cut it. This was a big development. Now, there are a lot of people who have sent messages meaning, is it over? Asking if it's over. There are a lot of people who have images of troops with blue helmets moving in and stopping everything. No. This is more significant than the ICJ. The UN has teeth, but the UN doesn't have troops. Those troops that you see with the blue helmets, they're contributed by other nations. The UN doesn't have troops of its own. The U.S. has had a really hard time finding countries that would be willing to commit their troops to reconstruction efforts afterward. The idea that a bunch of countries are going to sign up to put their troops in a situation where they're enforcing a ceasefire that really neither side has agreed to, when they were reluctant to put their troops in to enforce a ceasefire that both sides might agree to, the odds of that are slim to none. There's a chance, but it's not a big one. And no, it doesn't actually stop it. It doesn't stop it. It puts a lot of pressure on things, and it can definitely alter the outcome. It is definitely significant, but it's not a thing where this vote happened and now everybody goes home. It's not how it works. But it can't be. The part of this that really shouldn't be overlooked is, yes, the ceasefire vote. It went through. Okay? A lot of international pressure now. But the way it went through, with the U.S. abstaining and promising more, quote, consequences if there's an offensive into Rafah, that's the bigger development. That's going to, it should, in theory, have more sway. I know that there's also a number of European nations who are suggesting they're ready to recognize a Palestinian state. So there have been a lot of developments, but this doesn't mean peace. Not yet. So we'll see what happens. It's going to take a little bit to kind of process through all of this for the various nations. It's worth noting that the U.S.-backed proposal for the negotiations, it wasn't a breakthrough, but they finally got somewhere. And it's that Israel has agreed to a higher number when it comes to the exchange. We don't know if that's going to move into something a little bit more tenable or further in the negotiations, but it's a big change in positioning. So there's a lot going on, and there's reason to be semi-hopeful, but it's still not over. You still don't have peace because of the resolution. It's more pressure. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.